But indica and sativa have been debunked in terms of the cannabinoid. There's no indica cannabinoid or sativa cannabinoid. It's going to be more botanical, if anything, or else leaning towards your terpenes and flavonoids that'll give you that characteristic that'll lean sativa-like or indica-like. But when it comes to growth, a sativa-like plant, traditionally, those of us who've grown for a while, we know they're lankier, they're thinner leaves, and they're longer flowering time. But with all these hybrids, it's not always guaranteed. You can have something that looks sativa-like, but doesn't grow sativa-like. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have that lanky flowering time. So let's go into like a little bit of the tips for those who actually do have the sativa plant. Like, what do you guys do in the past when you've dealt with sativa plants or currently with Chris? What do you do in that early training thing? Anything different from a regular hybrid or indica?
Well, one of the plants I'm actually growing right now is a longer flowering, and it's leaning towards the sativa side of things. Actually, I wish I never planted it. I didn't really know that it was going to be a longer flowering strain until after I planted it. So I guess I should have probably looked a little bit deeper into it. All the other plants I have in the tent are like 8-9 weekers. And then this one is going to be like 12, maybe even 13 weeks. So do the math on that. That's like 20, maybe 30 days longer this plant is going to be growing versus 8 to 9 weeker ones. So, I know some people have made the mistake in the past of doing their 2-week flush too early, right? They're people who still believe in flushing. I know controversial topic. Some people believe in it. Some people don't believe in it. But if you do believe in it, you do that flush or cut off nutrients. If you're cutting off nutrients at week 6, week 7, because you think it's an 8 or 9 weeker, then you're going to get a lot of leaves dying off with the pistils still being white. And then, you really have to just continue feeding all the way up until, several weeks, week 10, 11 plus, you're still feeding. So I don't know if that really answered your question or not. That's just one thing that, in regards to growing these longer flowering strains that you have to really keep an eye out for.
Well, like I'm thinking, I was almost trying to just make the point of like, ain't a whole lot different until the flip, I feel like. But the difference is knowing, all right, I'm going into flower, I'm going to flip next week. Well, when you're flipping the flower, you're really not flipping the flower with these sativas. They're going to veg for another couple weeks, up to 4 weeks, and they're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you got to kind of account for that increase in size. We always talk about that when you flip, you have to account for that. But even more with the sativa, it's lanky. It's going to keep growing in that flowering phase for a little longer than what you anticipate because it takes longer to start flowering. It just gets bigger and taller and bigger and taller. And when you're in a tent, it's tough. Like I'm getting ready to move my garden over here just because I need something easier and more convenient to be right in my space. Probably going to cut it down to maybe a 2x2 in the closet and a 4x4 to take up my whole office over in the corner. And I'm having to consider that fact as like, well, I don't have a bigger space that I can stretch it out and lay it flat now and have this big, long sativa that's a big tarantula in the tent with a trellis net because I'm limited to 2x2 or 4x4 versus the 4x8 that I can stretch all the way out. So it really makes you consider your space as a factor and your timing as a factor. And that's where it all comes into place more versus the indica or hybrid growth that you traditionally see, at least for me.
That's exactly what I'm going through right now is, like you said, the veg growth is very similar. Once you do that flip, that's when this particular strain, it's Hades Throne by Zaza Genetics. A big shout out to Zaza. It's something special to him. I mean, I don't know what the actual cross is. I know one of the parents is a land race. And so it really, I think it's 100% land race on the sativa side of things. And the tarantula type growth that you mentioned is what I experienced. You know what I mean? It stretched for 4 weeks. So 4 weeks of stretch. I didn't think it was going to stretch that long. 4 weeks of stretch. Started flowering later than some of the other cultivars that were in there. I didn't really account for it. If I knew that it was going to stretch that long, if it was going to grow that much, I would have trained differently. I definitely would have trained differently.
This FTS clip was brought to you by AC Infinity, leaders in garden innovation. Use discount code TheStash15 at checkout to save some money on your order.
From the Stash Podcast.